Welcome back to Growing Up Late. So here we are. The house is sold, but I didn't have to move just yet. I didn't know when that was going to happen, but as I sat in the house, the full weight of what was going on in my life really settled in on me. My emotions were a bit all over the board. I felt grief, shame. I was angry. I didn't know where to put any of these emotions or what to do with them. But I just know that the full weight of what had happened really landed with me. And the house was big and it was mostly empty now. And I walked through every single room. Little ghosts and memories everywhere. I walked to our guest house, out back, to the pool. I looked around at the garden that I had meticulously mapped out every plant for. I might have been searching for some kind of clarity. It wasn't coming. I had no idea what was next. My best thinking was pretty much, I don't know. I'm usually really good in a crisis. So this was disappointing, to say the least. And then I remember I got a letter from the bank. And they were offering me a small amount of money to move out of the house sooner than I guess would ordinarily be the case. And that seemed like a sign. So I took the check and I thought, new bank account, fresh start over. I wasn't really ready to leave the house, but I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I didn't belong there. I, for some reason, had a lot of hesitation on going to the bank. I was scared. I hadn't had a great experience with a bank just recently. And I think I was dragging around a lot of those unresolved feelings. And my confidence was pretty low. But I went to the bank and went about opening up the new account, and it seemed to be going well enough. And then the banker stepped away from his desk and informed me that they had found an account that had been overdrafted repeatedly, and there was a pretty significant amount of money owed on it. And I had no clue what he was talking about. The bank account that they were talking about was in my husband's name. It was his debt. But here I was, sitting in front of them with my money. And we had been married at the time when he opened the account. So they took it. And they let me know I would have to fund the account some other way. I was devastated. I went back home and racked my brain to think, what in the world am I going to do now? There goes the check. There goes my fresh start. And then I remembered that I had this shoebox full of global currency. I mean, I had money from every trip I had ever taken. And I had traveled. I had money from South America, Mexico, Europe. I had euros and British pounds sterling. I had Swiss francs. I had Hong Kong dollars, Singapore dollars. I think I had some lira. I had money from everywhere. Coins, dollar bills. I had collected it. I had this notion that it would make a great piece of art or a shadow box or something like that. Something, that would just show off like the global world travels. And a bit ironic, but now I was hoping it would get me back in business with the bank. I live in a town where there's a lot of international travelers, and I knew they would exchange some of the money for me. So I went back to the bank. Not because I was feeling courageous or assured in what I was doing, but because I was out of options. And they took my little shoebox of money and exchanged what they could. Some things they didn't, and they brought me back the box with what they couldn't exchange and let me know how much money they had deposited in the account. And it was enough. It was enough for a start. And I just remember looking at the shoebox when I took it home with what was left, and I thought, these are pieces of a very different life. And I was grateful that I was able to do that. I love that story mostly because it made me feel resilient. For the first time, it was a tangible action that I had taken to get back up and refuse to be defeated. And then I had to go and do something about getting a job because that money was not going to get me very far. It did get me into a house. I had a small list of requirements, and a friend was a realtor and took me out, and we found just the perfect little house. It met almost everything on the checklist, and I was home again, and that house suited me just fine. And now, having greatly reduced my overhead, I went about looking for a job. And I had to think about jobs a little differently. I had retired, and when I heard about openings that I thought might be appropriate for me, or I had a lot of friends in the business who would talk about people they were looking for, and I would throw my hat in the ring, and I would oftentimes hear, you're way too qualified for that job. You're so overqualified. That job is so beneath you. And inside, my brain is screaming, I need a job. I really need a job. And I don't know if it was my pride or if it was a crazy circumstance. And I'm sure it was hard for some people to grasp or maybe just to look at. I didn't have a lot of the same friends at this point. Anyhow, I realized it wasn't about how well the job matched my credentials as it was about, would this job move me forward? And I did get some job offers. Friends of mine who owned small businesses needed a little bit of help here and there. I learned some new skills. It stretched me. I was paid well for the work I did. I didn't take it home at night. It worked out pretty well. And I started to make a new start. And I do remember some struggles. I'm not a big luxury person. I don't need a lot of high-end products or, the best of this and that. And I was certainly aware of my circumstance. But I remember one time, I had just enough money to get some things that I needed at the grocery store to last me until I would get paid again. And I got home and realized I had no shampoo. I mean, no shampoo. And it felt lousy. I think I called a friend and said, like, what do I even do? Maybe I didn't call anybody. Maybe that was a conversation I had in my head. But I had a bar of soap in the shower. So on that particular occasion, I washed my hair with bar soap. It felt a little defeated, demoralizing. It wasn't about the bar soap. It was this crazy reality of just how much my circumstances had shifted so quickly. So quickly. My life had changed. And maybe that was character building. I know that from that point on, I didn't have everything I needed, but I always had enough to take the next step. I had enough to begin again. And the work that I was offered led me to a career and a life that I really love. So, if you want to see how this unfolds, please follow and subscribe and join me next week. I promise it gets better.